I'm also a visual artist. I design cartoon characters and I paint and I draw and everything I do has an aspect of play to it. So playful.
Muy buenas noches, Jhon. Gracias por estar en el canal. Bienvenido.
De nada, de nada.
My pleasure. Bueno, yo quisiera darle el paso a un colega que es Andrés, que le va a preguntar sobre unos temas en específico para hacer orden cronológico. Entonces,
¿Las dos o una sola?
no, como quiera.
Okay. Hi, Jhon. It's really an honor to be here. Usually I'm the translator. Today the translator will be Jhon. But I'm so happy to ask you about this because, yeah, we can sum up your career in your work as a voice of actor and as an actor also in live action movies. And I had to ask you, man, how was work with two of the best directors, that is Ron Howard and Paul Thomas Anderson, mostly on the best two movies of Paul Thomas Anderson, Magnolia and There Will Be Blood, and of course in EdTV and Apollo. By the way, Apollo 13 we got on the channel the amazing Sander Berkeley, and also we got Michael Chamus Wild from Man.
I watched them shooting that scene actually. Well, thank you. What it was like, I've worked with Ron Howard on 5 films. So I have a very close relationship with Ron Howard also because his co-star on Happy Days is my mother, Marion Ross. So I've known Ron since I was about 13 years old. And Paul Thomas Anderson, I've been in 2 Paul Thomas Anderson films, and I've worked basically, I think I worked one day on Magnolia, took only one day, or one part of one day, and 2 days on There Will Be Blood. So I don't have a long and storied experience of working with him, but I enjoyed both projects very much. Paul Thomas Anderson's projects are always shrouded in secrecy, so I was not, like many of the actors, I was not allowed to read the whole script. I could read my page, so I didn't know exactly how I was fitting in, and so it was always a surprise to see what the movie was about in both cases. In Ron Howard's movies, of course, you read the whole script, and I was in The Grinch as well, and I knew very well what we were doing, so I could enjoy it from many different angles.
And now, with your voice over work, in fact, I got a t-shirt from one of your works that is Beavis and Butthead. I know you can see it. Tell us, because yes, I had to. In fact, this is the first day I put on this shirt, and I needed for this interview. It was a gift from Christmas, last Christmas. No, yes, tell us, because you had made a great voiceover work. In fact, one of our friends, he's fan from your work and Chowder. I am a fan from your whole work, mostly on video games. So yeah, if you can sum up that amazing aspect of your career, being the voice of Ultron, being the voice of a lot of characters, being in Beavis and Butthead, go ahead.
Well, yeah, my career really started in voiceover in New York City in the early 80s. I had always been interested in voice acting. My mother was very good, is very good at accents and imitating people. She's not an impressionist the way I've become, but she was very good at capturing people's personalities vocally. And so I learned early on that it was fun, amusing to imitate people and to do different kinds of voices and accents. And I always was amused by other vocal performances that I'd heard, whether it was Monty Python or The Goon Show or just even programs on the radio that I just liked a lot. So I sort of trained myself to be a voice actor out of my own enjoyment of it, and without really even noticing what I was preparing myself for all through my childhood. And then when I moved to New York in my 20s and I was trying to make enough money to stay in New York, I had this feeling that, I think I've got a little bit of an edge over my fellow actors. I think I'm just a little bit more confident, a little bit more versatile. And I found that as I auditioned, that I got better and better at mastering the art of the audition and getting to know casting people. And I started working, and within a year or so of being there, which was pretty fast. And then my career went very, very well from that point on, and I've never really looked back. So although it's evolved a lot, and now I mostly do other people's voices. When I was just starting out and I was a young man, I just did young man voices for commercials and radio and things, because that's what they do. You know, marketers do that. They use the voices of actors to talk to people in the same demographic. But now I mostly am known and work as an impressionist.
I led you with these two great gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Beavis and Butthead was a lot of fun to work on, I have to say. They have a television show that's coming out too, and I've worked on that a lot. I worked on their film, the Beavis and Butthead Control the Universe, or whatever it is.
Do the universe.
Do the universe. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. They get the verb right. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, first of all, Jim, welcome to this show. It's really an honor for us, for you to be present here. Looking at your filmography, you have a tremendous catalog. Even though most of those titles are just your voice, but still, it's a lot of work that needs to be recognized. So, our first question would be, you're welcome. Our first question would be regarding two particular projects that you were involved, called The Paper and Gordy. What can you tell us about your experience doing those two projects?
Well, Gordy I did Bill Clinton's voice. It was an impression job among many I've had in films. And Gordy had the misfortune of being the other pig-driven feature film in the same year that a movie called Babe was in the market. Babe did very well, made a lot of money, won Academy Awards. Babe, Pig in the City, that was a sequel. Babe, I think, was the first one. Our little movie, Gordy, did not do quite so well. But I again, it was a very short afternoon for me. I went in and did Bill Clinton's voice, saying a few lines at the end of the film, and that was that. The Paper was my very first feature film that I appeared in, and Ron Howard directed it in New York City, where I was living at the time. I auditioned for him and was very surprised to get the role. It's a small role, but I got to work with an Oscar-winning actress, Marissa Tomei, and it was my first feature film. So I was quite nervous, even though I'd done a lot of on-camera stuff before that. I did lots of commercials, but I had not been in a big Hollywood feature film, and this was a big Hollywood feature film. So I was nervous. I was not comfortable. But Ron made it very comfortable for me. Marissa made it very comfortable for me. And the scene is a nice little scene in the middle of a very big, fun movie. Again, this movie did not do terribly well compared to some of Ron Howard's big hits, like The Grinch and Apollo 13 and Beautiful Mind and some others. But it's a nice, tight little film, a lot of fun. And there's a huge cast, star-studded cast, including one of my heroes, Jason Robards, who is one of his last films. I think I'm in his last film as well, which is Magnolia, the Paul Thomas Anderson film. I can't imagine he did too many films after that. So, those are my recollections of those two pieces.
And also, I mean, coming back to your live action and voiceover work, what has been, well, you mentioned that you know Ron Howard for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
You worked on many movies with him on so many decades. Can you tell us which of the gazillion films that you've been involved with Ron Howard, which one of them has been the most fun that you've worked with?
Well, the two that really were super fun were The Grinch and Apollo 13. They're fun for different reasons. So Apollo 13 was fun because the story was very meaningful. It was a good story to tell. It's a story of people winning against impossible odds in a life and death situation. The same sort of theme that Ron has explored other times with films like 13 Lives, which is up for an Academy Award this year, I believe, which is another one about people working together to try and solve a very life-threatening situation. But Apollo 13, I also learned a lot about the space program, which I didn't really know about. I had to research that and find out a lot about. I got to talk to people who had been in mission control. I met Jim Lovell, the astronaut, and every day you felt like you were doing an acting job that has even a higher purpose than normal. I mean, we're always trying to entertain and make people feel better, make people think. This movie was about really making people think, educating people, telling a story that should be told, because I think it reinforces something in the human spirit about not giving up and looking for alternative answers and solving difficult problems together as a species. So I really did enjoy that. Now, the other type of fun, though, purely aesthetic, kind of even silly fun, was to be had on the set of The Grinch. And I worked on that show a long time for me. I worked on it for 4 months, which is a pretty long time for a shoot. Certainly the longest I've ever worked on a movie. And every day I'd go to work very early in the morning and have my makeup applied, and then spend the rest of, for 3 hours. And then I'd spend the rest of the day basically in a kind of a alternate universe of make-believe and fantasy. The Whoville set, which was in the largest soundstage on the Universal lot, was this massive little town of Whoville, and all the stores and all the homes were fully furnished. There were funny cars. Every person there was made up extraordinarily. Their faces were manipulated and created, their ears, their eyelashes, their clothing, their costume, their shoes, down to their jewelry. Everything was fantastical from this world of Dr. Seuss. And so you never got bored. You just walk around and look, and just, even if you didn't talk to anybody, you had a feast for your eyes every day, even over 4 months. It never really got old. And then the other factor was that the kind of actors that Ron found and put in that movie were from all sorts of different disciplines. There were a lot of actors like me who were like improv guys and funny voice guys. Then there were stunt people and circus people and big celebrities and mid-range celebrities and magic people, from the world of magic, and athletes of one kind or another. So you had this enormous mix of people that were all collaborating, along with the very talented makeup people. They were the most talented people, talented makeup people under the direction of Rick Baker. So, you were in just a rich world of talent and ability and variety. And I really had a great time on it.
What is the most fun that you've had with your voice over work? Like, you also mentioned that you did impressions. So I also want to know which is the character or the real life person that you've had the pleasure to imitate, that you've had the most fun with.
I'll tell you what, I've done George W. Bush many times. Used to be president. I imagine even some of your hispanohablantes pueden recordar esta persona de los Estados Unidos en el norte. So I like that one. And I like Patrick Stewart, who's, from the X-Men series. I like him very much. He and I bear a very strong relationship just by our physicality and our love of Earl Grey tea, hot. And there's many, like Robin Williams, of course, who I played the Blue Genie and many other roles. Robin Williams, who all miss him a lot, and I get to do his voice every now and then for Disney. That's a lot of fun. Great honor. He's gone but not forgotten. No, not by a long shot.
Wow.
It's fun. I enjoy to inhabit other people and to play other characters. I have some work coming out this year. There's a TV show called The Big Door Prize that I'll be on that's coming out on March, I believe, end of March. Not sure the date. On Apple TV, The Big Door Prize, starring Chris O'Dowd, marvelous Irish comedian who was in Bridesmaids. Wonderful, funny, dear guy. And also, I believe, the release of a very massive science fiction fantasy satire that I worked on a little while ago that I got to narrate, and that's called Mission Earth, and that should be launching this year too, and that I'm very excited about because that's a huge project.
The man's pretty busy.
Yes.
Excelente. De hecho, yo
That
tenía...
was epical. Yeah, that was epical. Go ahead.
Yes. Y además, hay algo que me tiene curioso porque él hace muchísimas, eso es un poquito del repertorio, por ejemplo, Sean Connery y Bryan Cranston, pero ¿cuál es la particularidad de pronto que usted ya puede desenvolverse en temas de los acentos? ¿Cómo pudiste como que dominar como el dialecto de Sean Connery? Y bueno, eso que nos comenta una experiencia sobre eso y también una experiencia sobre Meskimen. Me encanta esa serie animada.
So what John is asking is that, I mean, part of the imitation is not only to do the voice, but the accents. And among the examples that he was listing was Sir Sean Connery and Bryan Cranston. So he's asking, how are you able to pull out the accent and the specific voice of that specific character?
Well, let's take Bryan Cranston first of all. Luckily, he and I grew up in the same area, so I have the same natural kind of accent, I think, that Bryan Cranston does. I just hold my teeth in a slightly different way, and I become a different person when I'm trying to be him. I met him 2 or 3 times. He's a very, very gracious guy, and obviously fantastic actor. So that's a pretty simple one. Sean Connery, of course, comes from the complete different side of the world. And I like to study accents because it's fun. I enjoy the way when I hear someone speak, I can instantly sort of suss out or figure out what they must be doing with their lips and teeth to create that particular sound. But it does take a great deal of practice to listen effectively and to then practice over and over again so that you don't have to work at it in the middle of doing your act, for example. Well, luckily, I don't focus on the ones I don't do well. If I audition for a part and I don't do it well, they generally give the job to somebody else who can. But there are certain ones that I try to do just out of my own enjoyment that I would like to be able to master. And it's a constant, it's a little bit of a project, like there's an actor I admire very much, Woody Harrelson. I like Woody Harrelson a lot. And Woody Harrelson, I kind of know what it feels like to talk like Woody Harrelson, but I can't say that I have it down perfectly. I'm still kind of figuring it out and working it out. And it's something interesting to do with his teeth, the way he has his teeth and so forth. But I don't know. And then there are people like, what's his name, who played Snape, Alan Rickman. And to play Alan Rickman, you've got to suddenly there's something inside of your face that you have to pull down almost like a small umbrella behind your nose. And unfortunately, I know people that can do this even better than I. So I begin to think about their phone numbers and how I can get a hold of them. But I concentrate on the ones that I do well and that fall within my range as well, because my equipment is, a kind of a light baritone, I guess. And I don't have a very deep voice. I don't have a super high voice. I don't have a really young voice. So there's a kind of that's why I tend to specialize on people like Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, of course, and Colin Firth as well. I do like the Brits. I do favor the Brits, but also Marty Scorsese. He's another one. Absolutely. Robert De Niro. These are all people that don't have very, you wouldn't say they have very deep voices, right? I leave that to other guys. Yeah, I forget the question now.
That was pretty cool.
I tell you, that show, I'm glad you brought it up. The Mad animated show, which was directed and written by Kevin Shinnick, was a great experience. Really fun, almost a guilty pleasure. Like it was one of those things where I cannot believe I'm being paid to do this, because it was so much fun. And it was unusual in that, well, first of all, the writing was really good. So like you said, they would parody and satirize different pop culture things, anything from Harry Potter to, the Twilight series and other things like that. And they were very cleverly written. But then because of the way the show is produced, whereas normally a voice actor will go into a studio, I'm sure you've talked to people about this, and on an animated show, the voice recording is practically the first step in the production. Script, recording, then the animation. In this case, in Mad, they would write the script, and then the director would create a kind of a temporary voice track, and then they would animate the whole thing, and then they would have the actors come in and look at the already animated material and provide the voices, which is very unusual. I've never experienced it any other time. And the fun part of that was that you got to see what you were actually animating, what it was going to look like. And when it was done, they would play it back to you, and that's how people would see it on television. So one of the things that's not very enjoyable about animation, the way it's normally done, is that you do all this recording, you have no idea what it's going to look like. You really don't have a clue for maybe months or maybe years. In this case, it was like almost instantaneous, and I liked it. And I just liked Kevin Shinnick's sense of humor. He's brilliant. It was funny and silly stuff. I wish we still had that show on.
But we'll always have the reruns and the episodes on HBO Max. Now, amongst the many characters that you have gracefully imitated for us tonight, you mentioned Bob De Niro. We are very curious to see your Al Pacino impression.
Oh, okay. So I see how it works. You get me to do Al Pacino, and then you can decide whether or not I do it well or not. Okay. Here it is.
A lot of people have criticized my Al Pacino, saying it sounds much more like Cookie Monster than Al Pacino, but I beg to differ. I'm doing the best I can.
Bravo.
That's really wonderful.
Bravo. Yo creo que lo último sería felicitarlo. Como siempre, una pregunta que le hacemos a todos los invitados, cómo se define en una palabra de todo el trabajo que ha hecho, y felicitarlo. Muy agradecido por esta gran entrevista.
Well, Jim, we are very thankful for this wonderful time, this wonderful interview. You've made us laugh, and it's really great to hear these stories about so many professionals like you that are sometimes not that seen a lot, like many what you would call stars, but the body of work is very impressive. So this is a question that we ask all of our guests, and it is, how would you define yourself as a professional, as an artist, in one word?
In one word?
Yeah.
Playful.
That would be the word, playful.
Yeah.
Bravo. Excelente.
I'm also a visual artist. I design cartoon characters, and I paint and I draw, and everything I do has an aspect of play to it. So playful.
That's very good.
Maravilloso. Este es tu espacio para que diga tus redes. Un saludo para Colombia. La cámara es tuya.
All right, now Jim, please let us know where we can find you on social media, on your website, etc. And please give a big hello to our country, Colombia.
Colombia. ¿Dónde están en Colombia?
And Well, I am in
Bogota?
Bogota, and
Bogota
Jhon is
and Cúcuta.
Cúcuta.
Ah, que maravilla. I have many Colombian friends, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I do. Or a few. Yeah. Bueno,
Nice.
you can find me at jimmeskimen.com, on Instagram at Jimpressions, on YouTube, Jim Meskimen. I have a YouTube channel, and TikTok also is Jim Meskimen, I believe it's called, on TikTok. And I welcome all your viewers there. I do a lot of content and a lot of impressions, so I hope you and your listeners will enjoy it.
Okay, Jhon, there is a friend on the channel. It's called Cesar. He cannot arrive here to the interview because he was on the bus. No, I think he was on the truck because in Mexico he always come home on a truck. And he told us that he loves the character that you do in Shoulder. So you can send a bit high of you or your character to Cesar. It will be great. We will surprise him.
Okay, I don't remember what character I played in Chowder. Actually, I think it might have been George W. Bush.
Go ahead. Send a hi to Cesar.
Hey there, Cesar. How are you? This is former was President George W. Bush saying, "Hail Cesar! Watch out! Watch out for those Ides of March. I'm watching you."
Increíble.
Thank you.
Wow. No, man, su trabajo es increíble. No, gracias por tanto. Gracias.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Mucho
No,
gusto.
thank
Sorry to
thank
stand you up last time. I'm sorry I was late last time.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay. Go with
Hasta-
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Jim.
Gracias a todos.